Bitcoin has been breaking all-time highs. Ethereum has been giving back everything and the yields are staying very high. But in the meantime, we see XRP, Sui and PEPE doing great. But in this video, we're going to discuss a topic which is help, my altcoins are not moving, what to do. Let's get started. Before we're going to continue, there are two things that I would like to discuss with you. First thing is we launched our podcast, New Era Finance. The first episode is live on a different channel. 1.5 hours about Bitcoin, gold, what money is, what Trump is doing with our first guest, Bart Brands. You can find the link in the description beneath if you would like to watch it. I think it was a very good conversation, and in 2 weeks we're going to have another great guest. Then secondly, we have partnered with OKX, which means that we're going to do a lot of cool things, and that's why we've got a special action that we can do, which is if you sign up through OKX, then you'll be getting up to 270 euros in free money. You need to do that before December the 5th, and you need to hold a specific amount of assets on the crypto exchange. For instance, if you hold more than 100 euros, then you will be getting 20 euros in free as deposit bonus and additional 20 euros because of this action. Then as well for the Dutch clients, we are having something that is lower trading fees. The markets are going to be crazy. So I want to use a platform that has all the functionalities in there, which is the ability to trade spot, the ability to swap through DEXs, the ability to have a fast customer support, and all things in one platform. That's why OKX decided to lower the fees, and even lower than competitors as Bitfavo and Bybit. What do you need to do to get all of these? Go to okx.com/join/cryptomichnl and sign up your account there. If you do not like the actual exchange, you can easily transfer back your assets to your old exchange and continue trading there. Before we're going to be diving into your altcoins and why some are not moving, we need to understand why they are not moving. And that's when we discuss the latest news of this week, and everything is basically centered around something that we call CPI. And CPI wasn't really positive, hence why we saw that Ethereum was terrible. CPI came out earlier this week. And as you know, the markets are very picky on data points like CPI. So even if it's a miss of 0.1%, then it can have a pretty heavy impact on the markets. CPI came out slightly higher than previous month. And as a result, we saw that the yields continued to go up. Core CPI had the exact same impact. On Thursday, we also had the data points for PPI, which is the same, but then on the producer side of things. And also this one came out higher than expected. But the thing is that with PPI, it was a pretty big gap. So previous month we had 1.8%. Now it's back up to 2.6%. So from that aspect, we might be seeing that inflation is going to be sticky. The target was to get inflation beneath 2%, but now it starts to fire up again. So there is some concern surrounding the inflationary data at this point, and therefore also some concerns on the yields and the markets. But I'll get to that in a little bit. What we also saw when we talk about crypto in general is the inflow. The ETF inflow is substantial. Bitcoin has been seeing an inflow of 4.5 billion since Trump got elected. 4.5 billion USD getting into Bitcoin as a result of Trump being elected. And that is the primarily reason why Bitcoin has been running to 93K and has been printing new all-time highs. The thing that I find most important is the fact that Ethereum has finally been seeing some inflow too. The inflow in the Ethereum ETF has been yielding 750 million since Trump got elected. And as a reference, prior to that data point or through that date, the inflow or outflow was between 0 to 20 million. Now, since Trump got elected, the inflow has been going above 100 million on ETH. And that is the best week on record. And also, if you calculate everything, including the outflow on Grayscale, finally the inflow in ETH ETF has become positive. So that is a good signal for the markets in general. However, the yields remain to be going upwards as the PPI and CPI have been resulting into a case where the yields have been going up and continue to go up. And that is usually a bad sign for people looking for yield. I've been explaining this before, but if you're looking for yields, you want to have a lower interest rate on government bonds, because then the incentive of going into Ethereum DeFi is significantly larger, but that pendulum is going the wrong direction, as right now the yields are going up, so Ethereum becomes less attractive, and that's why Ethereum continues to fall. On top of that, we've got the Fed with their projections, and what we want to see is that forward-looking, the Fed is likely going to do more rate cuts. Now, we had a 50 bips rate cut, we had a 25 bips rate cut, and now we've got a next meeting coming up on the 18th of December, where the Fed is likely, as we can see in the projections, likely going to do another 25 bips rate cut, but it's not 100% sure. It's actually decreasing over time, which means that the markets are likely projecting no rate cuts or one as a maximum for the coming period. And if you move that forward to the period of March, you can see that in the data points, we still have a projection for one rate cut and not more. And that's why the yields are not falling. Because if the markets are likely expecting the rate cuts to continue and to be substantial, then the forward 2-year yield and the forward 10-year yield would be substantially lower. And if that's going to be lower, Ethereum becomes more attractive. But currently it's the other way around, hence why Ethereum has been printing new lows against Bitcoin. And we're still waiting for data points to ensure that the interest into Ethereum is going to increase. And in order to have those data points, we are looking for bad labor markets, or we're looking for worse economic data, because that is going to provide the trigger for the Fed to do QE and to lower the interest rates on government bonds. Now, additionally, we've seen something which is the impact of Trump on the dollar. We know that in his previous term, he has been implementing some tariffs, and if that is going to continue again, then we can expect the US dollar to be increasing in terms of strength. And as a result of Trump being elected, we saw the euro collapsing by more than 4% in just a matter of a week. So there's a lot of volatility happening. And there's also a lot of volatility happening in the altcoin markets, as SUI is doing great. Primarily reason is Raoul Pal being on the Diary of a CEO, talking about SUI printing new all-time highs and attracting a lot of new investors into it. And I've been making a video earlier on SUI, so I hope you have been enjoying it. And now I expect other coins like SAI to follow through, and I expect the altcoin markets to follow through in general. But the question is, what altcoins are going to be moving, and what should you do if you are into altcoins which are not moving? The primary question of this video is what to do when your altcoins are not moving. And we are currently in the longest bear market for altcoins. Ethereum is still going down since the middle of 2021. People are projecting that next year the bull market is already over. I've got a different opinion, but we'll see. But the question is what to do when your altcoins are not moving. And I know it could be frustrating. At least my general frustration is when I'm into real altcoins that are doing something, and then all of a sudden a squirrel comes by where people have been making millions with. That could be frustrating, and I get the feeling. Previous cycle we had the exact same with some meme coins. We had it with NFTs. We had it with some DeFi protocols. It always happens. And the general consensus is what are people doing during that period is that they swap from the coins that they have, which are not moving, towards, for instance, something like SUI at this point, because SUI is all over social media and people are projecting wild numbers to get with SUI in the coming period. And I'm not saying it's a wrong move, but getting FOMO into play because someone else is making a return and you had a thesis into a coin that has not been moving, that could be an attractive way of making a return, but it's also the, well, I would say best ingredient to go wrecked. So what are people doing? They swap those coins for something like SUI, and then all of a sudden SUI is correcting a little bit and the other coin starts to move and we get the vice versa again. The second thing is, because of holding assets for a substantial period of time and seeing something else running, having a tremendous return, people are looking to hold their positions for a longer period of time to make that exact same return, and that is independent of every asset. So they would like to make their losses with the asset that they are currently holding and are going to be holding it for too long, in the sense that they have been holding it through the entire bear market, and now they are expecting to do a 50x with something that has been going around for a cycle already. Now the question is, what to do if you are having those altcoins? First of all, be patient. I know it's a super boring argument, but the markets in crypto are very volatile, and in terms of altcoins, it is a very, well, bearish market where once it starts to turn, it goes vertical, it goes bananas, which means that if you have a thesis into an asset, into a narrative, and in my case, I'm long on Ethereum, DeFi, infrastructure, and a little bit on AI, then if that thesis remains to stand, then you need to hold on to your positions, because in these accumulation periods, it's the easiest to accumulate your positions. Once it starts to go off, it is super hard to get into. So the only thing you need to do is to find something that kills your patience. Because if you are currently watching your positions and are doing that on an hourly or daily basis and you're getting frustrated, but your thesis is correct, just find something in between to get your eyes off the charts, to make sure that you stay in your positions, make sure that you're confident with your thesis. The only thing is that what you need to do is to question yourself. So for instance, I've been making a video on this, I think 3 months ago, where I was saying I'm going to reverse the older altcoins into newer coins. They are more risky, but I expect a higher return to be made. So you need to question that if your general thesis is correct, then you should ask yourself, if I purchase SUI at this point, is that going to yield me a higher return in 6 months' time in terms of percentages than the one I'm having here? And I could say that if for instance, let's say Omni. If Omni Network is a new narrative that is currently correcting and has a market cap that's less than $1 billion, what's the return going to be once the narrative kicks in compared to SUI that has been making new all-time highs? I think that my answer is going to be that Omni is likely going to yield a higher return projected than SUI, but it also implies a higher risk. And if that is your answer, that it is going to yield a higher return, then I'm happy staying into my position, and I don't need to rotate towards something that is already going off substantially. So I think overall the question is to decide which ones you would like to have, but also to stick to your fundamental thesis and to find something in between that makes you more happy, that makes you watch the charts in a less frequent manner. And the second thing that I wanted to discuss is explaining those returns in the charts of those altcoins and why I'm making those decisions that I've been making. So a few things are important in this sense, which is that the older the coin, the lower the return, because the bigger the market cap, which is lower risks as well, technically. And the second thing is that if something else starts to move, and I've been going through that in the previous cycle, you need to have those cojones and stay into your positions. I'll show you a little bit regarding those positions that I had in the previous cycle. But the first thing is, we're going to be looking at the potential returns that you could be making. And if something starts to age, which is it becomes older, the returns are going to be less in terms of percentages. Here you can see that Bitcoin technically has been making a substantial return of 5 million% in the first 2 years. And then in the next bear market towards the next peak, it was 60,000%. Then in the 2017 cycle, we have been yielding a return of 11,000%. And in the 2021 cycle, we have been yielding a return that was 2.2k%. Now, if you are going through all those assets, for instance, if you're looking at Ether that started to exist since 2016, which peaked in 2017, we see that it was 272,000% in return. And in 2021, it was 5,000% already. And the same can be said for anything that's comparable to, for instance, Litecoin, that yielded a return of 29,000% in the first cycle. And in the second cycle, it was 1.7k%. So it's not expected that Litecoin is going to do a similar return in this cycle, except if there is so much liquidity being added, then it might be true that we are breaking previous runs. But you can see that the older the asset is, the lower the return will be in a new cycle. And for that actual reason, I said I'm going to divert from assets that are super old, and I'm going to rotate into newer coins, which might be providing those returns of 30,000%, or anywhere in that ballpark, because we're in a new hype cycle for new narratives. So I have increased my risk, and by increasing my risk, then it might be true that there's more arguments needed before it starts to move. So I'm getting into a stage right now where my altcoins are not moving, whereas, for instance, something like Sui or PEPE or Dogecoin is actually moving. And if you go back into the previous cycle, and I'm looking at, for instance, something like Chainlink, that has been doing a tremendous return in the previous cycle, of course. And if you look at it from this perspective, and I'm going to put it from my log scale, you can see that during the period of the DeFi summer, we had a return that was going up substantially. So we had this previous run here in the middle of my screen where it ran from $4 towards 19, then corrected towards 7, and actually during the period of Q4, we continued to stabilize, and then it started to shoot up. Now, some of my positions, for instance, Veracity back in the day, and I have to put it back on log scale, as you can see, Veracity during this period also made a substantial nice run here, but during the period of September, I positioned myself into that one. And Chainlink started to continue to go up. I wanted to increase risk by having smaller assets. And in that period, Veracity dropped more than 60%. Against Bitcoin, it dropped more than 80%. While in the meantime, people were making a ton of money by being into Chainlink or whatever project was moving during that period. Maybe it was Solana already. And then after that, my project, that is Veracity, started to make a 26,000% return. So those newer coins are the ones that are yielding those returns that Litecoin, Ethereum, and Chainlink have been making in the previous cycle. Chainlink is not going to do the exact same as during that cycle. It probably is going to have a return anywhere in the ballpark of 2,000 to 5,000%. That is very likely to see. So as it is going into the second cycle, so I'm going to project it here. As you can see, we are looking at a low for Chainlink at approximately $5. Well, then it could be running to anywhere around 150 to 200 bucks. But that is in percentages still way less than all those newer coins. And as you can see, narratives follow each other. So right now we had Grass and DePIN starting to wake up. And maybe modular blockchain or maybe DeFi is going to follow after that. So I'll have a window where some coins are moving already, mine are not, but I still know that I've got them into the accumulation phase and I need to just wait. Because if we're looking at stuff that I have in my portfolio, for instance, Optimism, I always revert back to Optimism, which is currently just having a consolidation. I know that as long as it stays into this window, which is between $1.20 to $2, once it breaks through that high, that's going to be the moment where it starts to fire up that bull cycle. So I don't want to be positioned in that run. I want to be positioned right now. And the same is the conclusion for smaller coins. I've been discussing Omni in this one. the smaller coins that as Omni is here, it's having the exact same accumulation period. And once it starts to revert from this current consolidation and attacks the highs again, that's when the uptrend starts to happen. And that's also when we're going to have those returns, or potentially can have those returns that Chainlink had in the previous cycle. So we just discussed what to do if your altcoins are not moving. What's my game plan? I've been discussing it in the previous video, but I still want to make a small summary. And the question is, what is your horizon? What is your potential return? And what's your game plan? And my game plan is currently being into the ETH ecosystem, being into DeFi, being into AI, and having my positions into high risk assets, which are newer assets. My horizon is technically between 6 to 12 months for these positions. So I'm currently into those, but once the markets start to run up, I would like to start de-risking and going back into assets like Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana. My question would be, would you like me to show how I'm trading those? In a sense, would you like me to make a portfolio on an exchange where on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, we're going through them, including a strategy where I show you my returns? Let me know in the comments beneath. I'm happy to be helping and assisting you on my personal strategy going into the markets. And I know there are a lot of people that have making jokes about me and my decisions that I've been making, but my thesis was right the previous cycle, and I think it's going to be right in this cycle as well. So my return is expected to be a 10x. My horizon is between 6 to 12 months. My game plan is to be positioned, hold for now, but once it starts to go vertical, to rotate into less riskier assets and to rotate into newer ones that are likely going to follow through. I hope you have been enjoying this update. We are going to be making more educational content, so stay tuned for the upcoming ones on Thursday and Sunday. And also check out our podcast channel, where we are going to be making a new podcast that's going to be recorded and going to go live on the 26th of November. Have a good day. Ciao.